Yes, students, welcome back to our new biology class. Today I'll be starting with a new chapter called Heredity and Evolution. This is indeed the most interesting chapter of your book. But before starting the chapter, I'll ask something to you. Okay, students, tell me, what is the first response that the elders give when a child is born in the family? That, Arey, the eyes looks like the father, the face looks like the mother, the eyebrows are identical just like the grandpa, the smile is like grandma. But even after all these similarities, the child is not the replica of any of the parent or grandparent. We have seen that the reason behind this observation is variation in the previous chapter, and also seen that the variations are very less as in case of asexual reproduction and very prominent in case of sexual reproduction. Now, the question has haunted the scientists from the ancient times that how are these traits transferred from the offspring to from the parents to the offspring or generation after generation. Okay, by now, by the chapter of reproduction, we know it's the gametes that carry the traits from the parents to the offspring. But why? Some of the traits are expressed and some are not. From where the new traits they come? This question was, in the mind of scientists for many years. Many theories were put forward to support or to answer this question. But none of them had the scientific explanation or backing. In the late 18th century, a monk who was actually not a scientist called Gregor Johann Mendel, who actually was working in a monastery, but he had completed his study in the field of science and mathematics in the University of Vienna, and then came back to a church to teach the students. He also was fascinated by the same question. How are traits transferred from one generation to the next? This Austrian monk actually had a very nice kitchen garden. Since when he was studying in the University of Vienna, he came in, he got along, or he had the opportunity to work with many great botanists of that time. So he had learned the principle of hybridization, growing plants, and how to emasculate or cause bagging of the plants, how to choose traits. He had learned all those in the University of Vienna. And using those techniques, he started growing the pea plants in his small kitchen garden. Pea plant, Pisum sativum, is a very interesting plant. It differs in many traits. Traits means characters. Some are tall plants, some are short plants, some bear purple flowers, some bear white flowers, some have green seeds, some have somewhat yellowish seed. In some, the seeds are very round and smooth, some it's wrinkled. Some have the pea pod, the cover of the peas, as green in color, some are yellow in color. At the same time, some flowers grow at the axis and some at the terminal ends. So these pea plants, they were of many varieties. And Gregor Johann Mendel chose these plants and started growing them in his kitchen garden, and started observing the transmission of traits in those pea plant. Definitely, choice of pea plant was an accident, but it had many advantages, which we will be discussing later on. So, Mendel studied pea plant and he came to the conclusion how traits are transformed for the first time with scientific backing, and published it in a very small journal of that time. At the same time, when he was publishing these records, Charles Darwin was also publishing his papers on evolution of life, the great theory of struggle for existence. All those things were being discussed, and whole the scientific community was more interested towards Charles Darwin. So at that time, Gregor Johann Mendel did not get any importance in the scientific world. But it was after his death, his entire principles were again rediscovered, and then the scientific community came to know what level of work he has done. And it was after his death he was awarded with the title that Father of Genetics. So the genetics today we will be studying here is due to Gregor Johann Mendel. Though he did not know, he did not realize that in his lifetime what magnitude of work he has done. So this is just a story about Gregor Johann Mendel, and now we will be starting with his principles. What did he say? But before going into what did he postulated or what did he said, let us see what work he had done over a period of say 16-17 years. He grew the plants in pure form. What do I mean by pure form? That a tall tree will produce in its progeny only the tall trees. It will not produce the dwarf trees. Similarly, a dwarf pea plant will produce only the dwarf pea plant. So, a plant which is true to its trait, which produces only one kind of trait in its innumerable progenies, is known as the pure or homozygous plant, or homozygous for that particular trait or character. And the plant which is not pure for its trait, like a tall plant which is producing a dwarf plant in its next progeny, and again a tall plant in its yet next progeny, is known as a impure or heterozygous plant, or heterozygous for that particular trait. So the first thing that Gregor Johann Mendel did, he grew only tall plants in one side of his kitchen garden and dwarf plant in another side of his kitchen garden. Then what did he do? You know, pea plant is bisexual flower. It bears bisexual flower. It's a bisexual plant. It has both gynoecium and androecium in the same plant, same flower. But what he did? In one set of flower, he removed all the anthers, which is known as emasculation. And in another set of plant, he bagged or covered the stigma with muslin cloth, so that the flower from where the stamens are removed, it acts as a female flower, and the flower where only the anthers are there and the stigma is bagged, acts like a male flower. And then what he did? He collected the pollens from the male flower and dusted over the stigma of the female flower, his own made female flower. What will happen after that? Fertilization will take place and the pea seeds will be produced. He collected the pea seeds and then he again sowed the pea seeds. He got the next generation from them. So the previous one where he made to cross the male and the female flower artificially is known as crossing or cross-pollination. And in the next generation, what he did? He allowed the flowers to mate the way naturally they do. And he said this is selfing. So as a result of selfing also he found the pea seeds, and then what he did? He regrew these pea seeds again. And every time he grew the pea plant, he noted down all the characters that he was looking for and then applied mathematics, a law of probability, to the observation and then formulated his principle. The parent plant he took were known as the parent generation. The generation that was formed as the result of cross-pollination was known as the first filial generation or the F1 generation. And the generation after that, that was produced upon selfing, was known as the F2 generation or the second filial generation. And the generations after that, F3, F4, F5 and so on. Mendel was successful because he did not concentrate on all the characters that were present in the pea seeds at one time. He emphasized or studied one character at a time. When he had completed studying that one character, he went on to the two characters together, how they are inherited, three characters, how they are inherited. So because he went in a gradual manner, he succeeded in finding out and postulating the theory or the laws of inheritance.